Hey everybody, welcome back to my layout. This will be a layout update for December 2019. Let's have a look at what's new on the layout. So besides the obvious tree making that I've been kind of doing off and on over the last month, I did start a bit of scenery on the layout. Well, one thing I'll show you quick that was really simple and easy to do. This hill over here at Morant's Curve. This is pretty much one of the #1 comments I get when people come to see the layout. They always ask me, what is this stuff? And they'd point up on the top of the hill here. And what I had done was, whenever I had extra spray foam left from filling in cracks and stuff on the layout, I would just spray it kind of up on that hill in this general area. The reason for that is I know eventually I wanted to build it up, and I didn't want to have to build it up with dirt or something. So it looked really weird. It kind of looked like alien brains or something. So real quick, before I had some people over last month, I just covered it with dirt just to get rid of that, so it kind of looked more realistic and not so much like an alien landscape. I mean, it still does, but just one of those things that was super easy and quick to do. I don't know why I waited so long to do it. So all the alien brains have been covered up on the hill over here. Over here on the other side, you can see a little bit of it poking out here. That's what it was before. So basically I didn't want to waste any of that spray foam, so I'd always just dump the cans here when I was using it up. Now it's covered up with just nice sifted dirt from just outside my house here. Looks a little bit more like a hill. So over here on the Banff side of the layout, I did spend a lot of time going along the top edge of the mountain backdrop, and I know some people had noticed in previous layout updates, but sometimes some places in the top edge it was kind of curling over a little bit, and it kind of distracts away from the backdrop. So what I did was just carefully go along with a Q-tip and just some Elmer's glue stick stuff, and I just glued basically the top edge about 1/4 of an inch the way in. I went along the whole top edge all the way to the end. So it should be nice and secure now. It's still just mainly held up with coils of masking tape, but now the entire top is glued to the wall. So hopefully, it was kind of like you had to commit when you do that, because the paper does not come off once it's got that glue on it. But hopefully it'll just stay here for many years to come. So I spent the majority of my hobby time this month working over here on the Points East staging loop, and what I did was a lot of ballasting, and we'll just pan over here. You can see pretty much just to the other side of that well car over there. It's ballasted with terrain material in between the tracks and kind of along the sides here as well. So I did all 5 tracks all the way over here. All these staging turnouts, switches, and coming around, I stopped right here. This is where I ended for now. So I did it in a couple different steps. The first thing I did was I took kind of a brown wash that I made, and I did the kind of random ties you can see here in this staging track. I just picked random ones, and if you kind of give them a quick fade, you know, every other tie or every third tie or something, and then the ones that you don't do, those look like new ties. So I think it had a pretty good effect. This track here looks not bad. So one reason I started in staging, and it's pretty much the main reason, is that these tracks usually have trains in them, so you don't really see them too much. They're pretty much underneath trains all the time. So it's a good place to start and practice and kind of build up the skills of weathering track, because I'd never done it before. My old layout, I just ballasted the Flextrack as it came, so all the ties look the same. But I've read a lot and looked at a lot of pictures of guys who do the weathered ties like this, and I really like the look of it. So I started in the logically would be just in the very back, right, the furthest from view, and that's where I started. And I did make a few mistakes off the start. You can't really tell; it's hard to see on the camera, but like further back where I first started, my paint was too white and too thick. So as I got further along and got a little more experience, it started looking better, I think, in my opinion anyway. So this was kind of more towards the end. So I really watered the paint down to make it a wash, and I even got it, I worked it towards more of a brown than a white, and I think that looked really good. So this is kind of the try. This is what I wanted it to look like after all that practice, because this is quite a bit of track, even though it's just the entrance to staging. This is around 60 feet of track that I ballasted and weathered the ties on. So I listened to quite a few podcasts while I was working on this this part of the layout. So the dirt in the yard here, this is just that gray dirt that, if you remember, I was sifting a few layout updates back. I found it, just dug it in a ditch, filled up a couple 5-gallon pails a few years ago, and then it sat in my garage forever. And then I finally sifted it this fall, and now it's finally being used on the layout. But it's a nice color, this gray. It really looks like you know, a yard that would have a lot of vehicle traffic or something in it, where it kind of is a very light gray in the gravel and the soil around there. So I think that was the perfect kind of dirt to use in this area. And then in between the tracks, once the ballast dried, I just kind of sprinkled a little, you know, kind of thinner lines of it in between to kind of give that faded look that's underneath the ballast. Another thing I did before the ballast, and I almost forgot about it, but I marked the foul points with kind of a light yellow. Not really prototypical, they wouldn't paint the whole rail like that, but for the operators to be able to see it from the switch panel, it kind of has to be obvious. So I chose to mark those, because without the markings you can't really tell, you know, if your tail end or the head end is foul of the other switches. So it's kind of important, the way that my staging loops works, that you park your train inside the foul points on each track. So those are all painted on each track at each end. So there's 5 on this side and 5 on this side. So there's nothing super fancy with the way that I ballast track. I do have a couple of these ballast laying tools. I've never used this one. It seemed like it wouldn't work very good. I don't even know the brand of this. If you look inside it, it's got like a little parchment paper. You can tell how old this thing is. Looks like somebody typed it up on a typewriter. But no brand or anything on this piece of typewriting paper, so I don't know where this comes from, but it's pretty simple and straightforward. I've had better luck with this other one that I have, and this is the one that I use. This is from, it says Proses on the inside here, and it works pretty slick. I can just show a quick video that I took with my phone when I was first ballasting. So it works pretty good. It doesn't work good for turnouts. I figured that out after. It works best for just straight Flextrack. So the turnouts, I still do them by hand with a brush, but this works good for just kind of getting if you're doing long runs of just Flextrack, this thing works really good. One little modification I did do to it was I took a file and I actually filed these down a bit more, just so that it fit even more snug above the ties. I found straight out of the box it was leaving a bit too much ballast, and then you're having to, you know, you have that much extra material everywhere you go. So that seemed to help, just running a file down the 2 spots for the track, the rail there. The other thing that I used, and this is new, normally I use a spray bottle from the dollar store, but my spray bottle broke, so I was gonna go get another one, and my wife said, why don't you get one of those hairspray ones, because they have a really fine mist, and she uses it, she likes to sew a lot, and she uses it for sewing. Like, she has her, there's some kind of spray that they spray on fabric before they iron it, and she has one. It works really good. So she got me one from the hairdresser store, the salon or whatever. It's like $7. And this thing has revolutionized the way that I lay ballast. The mist is so fine that comes out of it that it doesn't disturb your ballast. And my old kind of, you know, $2 spray bottle I had from the dollar store, sometimes it would shoot out droplets, and then those droplets would cause the ballast to beat up inside a droplet of water and kind of wreck what you had laid down. This never happens with this. So if you have a wife that goes to, you know, the shampoo, conditioner, or hairstylist store, get one of these. This is what they use, and it is awesome. I don't know how good we'll be able to see it, but it almost works like an aerosol sprayer. Like I don't know what's the technology behind the pump on this thing, but it works so good. And you can see like how fine that mist is that comes out of this thing. So I highly recommend these little hairdresser bottles. If you lay ballast like I do, and this is what you use to spray your wet water, this thing is the way to go. So then, like I said in the last video, I'm using Scenery Express number 50 ballast. I had some darker stuff with more of a blended ballast that I used for the yard tracks. It's more of a darker color. It's in a Woodland Scenics thing, but it's actually Scenery Express. And then for the kind of tricky areas like switch points and turnouts, I use a brush. I got a couple different ones. This is more of a fine brush. It works good for doing the switch points. And then I've got more of a coarser brush, and it's kind of like you're digging dinosaur bones. You just carefully move the ballast along and get it into its final shape with just the brush and your finger. So on the subject of wet water, one other thing I wanted to talk about. So the terrain that I use, the basically dirt from outside that's sifted. And in the past on my old layout, and I've seen, I don't know on how many different things on Model Railroader or on different forums or whatever, guys bake their dirt in the oven using a tray or whatever. I didn't do that this time. And what I found is that I think that step is just totally unnecessary. So if you bake it to dry it, I get that. You want to dry it out, you don't have any moisture. But I mean, this dirt, I grabbed it in the fall and it was already super powdery. Then it sat in a pail in the garage for like almost 2 years before I sifted it. So it's dry, like there's no moisture in it already. And then the other reason I can see that you would put it in the oven is to remove any, biological growth or bacteria or anything that's living in it basically. And that's a valid point, and I think the heat would get rid of that. But since if you ballast like I do and you use wet water to, remove the surface tension from the ballast so that you can get your glue onto it, I found that if I just use 99% alcohol, like a cap full of it, in my spray bottle over here, so I just fill the spray bottle with tap water and then I pour in a cap of 99% alcohol. When you're spraying your ballast down, you're spraying the dirt and everything, that is going to kill anything that's in that dirt because it's pure alcohol basically. So I figured, why not just remove that step? If you're putting it in the oven simply because you want to get rid of any microbiome that's in the soil, well, you can just remove the step if you're spraying it with basically sterilization alcohol. So that's what I did this time. We'll see if I have any spiders or beetles or something come out of my scenery, but I don't think so. I don't think anything's surviving my little hairdresser bottle here that's got the rubbing alcohol in it. So that's my take on it. I'd love to hear your comments of why we do that, but I'm kind of one that always questions things, and for this layout I would have been baking a lot of dirt. So for me, it's not really practical to be running trays and trays and trays of dirt through our oven. I feel like this is just quicker and it kind of saves a step. I'm just doing it the way that I'm doing it. So I didn't do the whole loop, and there's a reason for that. It's because eventually, someday when I get to building the CN layout, the CN loop will stack on top of this thing. So you won't even see, it's coming. I came back a lot farther than you're even going to see. So no point in wasting time or ballast going all the way around this thing if it's just going to be completely hidden underneath another loop of staging. Alright, this view illustrates it a little bit better, but you can see how eventually when the CN side comes over here to loop around and then over, and it'll go all the way around the back too. So nothing to say I won't ballast all 5 tracks on the top of the CN loop, but that is probably years and years away before I ever get to that part of the layout. So for now, this will be good, and it looks pretty finished when you're standing here at the control panel, which is pretty much right where the camera is. One other little note about the ballasting was way back, I think it was a year ago if you go back that far in the videos, but when I was talking about this removable edging, this came in really handy for when I had to do some work in here. I pulled all these off and was able to have full access to basically a flat shelf to work on from both sides. So that removable edging, still a good idea, even now, years later after I installed it. I still take them out every once in a while when I have to do some work, and it was super handy, you know, for painting these ties in here and doing all the ballast. It'd be really hard to do if this was permanent. So we're going into the holiday season up here in Canada. I got some time off, so I'm looking forward to spending time with family and friends. And when I do get some time to work on the layout, I want to, I'm going to take the plunge and I'm going to glue down the station platform here at Banff. I'm just going to go for it, get that all secured to the layout, and then I'm going to push on with scenery and ballasting. So goal for the next few weeks will be to work on that, and then the early part of the new year we'll be trying to finish Banff off. I got a few structures I can start building that will be built from scratch using airplane wood, like the ice house here at Banff, right here by the CP dump truck. So that's what I'm going to be working on over the next couple weeks. So that'll wrap up this layout update video, guys. Wishing you all the best this holiday season from my family to yours. Hope you all get some time to spend with your family and friends. Have a really safe holiday season and a great new year. As always, thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time. Merry Christmas.